Massive stone dams rise from dry landscapes with no rivers in sight. These ancient structures were not built to hold water at all. They guarded treasures, contained spirits, and preserved knowledge in ways that defy modern expectations. Across 24 remarkable examples, we will uncover what these dams were really designed to hold, from imperial gold to volatile gases. You will discover how ancient engineers used these barriers for protection, ritual, and survival, reshaping everything you thought you knew about the past. How many other historical mysteries are we still overlooking, built in plain sight for centuries? But to truly grasp their purpose, we must first step back and ask a fundamental question. What exactly is a dam, if not for water? These structures are, at their core, immense barriers designed to contain, to restrain, to hold back immense force. Ancient engineers simply applied that same principle to forces far more diverse and sometimes more dangerous than any river. They built to contain spiritual energies believed to be as tangible and volatile as a flash flood, to secure royal tombs against thieves with the same immovable permanence, and to isolate volatile natural gases that could choke the life from a village. This was a fusion of raw practicality and deep mythology, where the form of a dam followed a function we would never expect. Archaeologists like Dr. Elena Petrova, who specializes in ancient infrastructure, point out that these builds are a window into a culture's deepest fears and highest values. What did they feel was so powerful, so precious, or so perilous that it required a wall of stone to keep it in, or to keep the world out? The answer was never just one thing. It was treasure, faith, danger, and knowledge. Understanding this broader concept transforms these silent stone walls from curious ruins into profound statements. They are declarations etched in rock, telling us what ancient societies truly valued enough to lock away forever. And with that understanding, we can now approach our first and perhaps most iconic example. Deep within the Sichuan province, a monumental stone wall curves through the landscape, known as the Jinlong Dam. For generations, locals and early archaeologists believed it was a failed or abandoned hydrological project, a structure meant to tame a river that had long since changed its course. But the truth, uncovered through careful excavation, was far more fascinating. This dam was never intended to hold back water. It was built during the powerful Han Dynasty to hold back something infinitely more tempting to mankind: greed itself. It was a money barrier, a fortress designed for one purpose: to protect an imperial treasury hidden within the mountain it was built against. Its massive, thick walls were not about hydraulic pressure. They were about security, forming an imposing facade meant to deter any would-be thief. Behind that facade, tunnels burrowed deep into the rock, but these were not simple passageways. Legends describe a labyrinthine complex protected by more than just stone, speaking of deadly mechanical traps that would trigger upon intrusion and spiritual guardians summoned through ritual to watch over the empire's wealth. This wealth was the lifeblood of the Han Dynasty: vast stores of gold ingots, priceless silks, and exquisite jade artifacts that underpinned the entire imperial economy. The dam was the public face of this security, a visible, intimidating statement of power and protection. Its discovery forced historians to completely rethink ancient economic systems, revealing a level of sophisticated financial planning and security engineering that was previously unimaginable. This was not a bank vault, it was a geological fortress, proving that to ancient rulers, wealth was a force as powerful and as needing of containment as any raging river. But while some cultures built dams to contain physical treasure, Others sought to restrain forces that were entirely intangible. Far from the imperial treasuries of China, an entirely different kind of containment was taking shape. In the dense jungles of Guatemala, the massive stonework of the Elmerador Dam rises from the forest floor. For decades, its purpose was a mystery, as it clearly did not channel or hold any significant water source. The answer was not found in engineering manuals, but in local folklore and the careful archaeology that finally listened to it. This was not a dam for water, but for spirits. According to enduring Mayan traditions, this immense barrier was constructed to imprison malevolent forces and chaotic energies that threatened the cosmic order. The Maya viewed the world as a delicate balance between the physical and the spiritual realms, and this dam was a critical piece of infrastructure designed to maintain that equilibrium. Excavations confirmed these beliefs, revealing that its core was not just packed earth and stone. Built right into the very fabric of the structure were ceremonial offerings, precious jade figurines, and obsidian blades, items not for structural integrity, but for spiritual potency. These were permanent sacrifices, sealing a pact to keep the darkness at bay. The dam was a metaphysical lock, and these offerings were its key. It stands as a profound testament to a world view where engineering and religion were inseparable. To the Maya, a chaotic spirit could be as destructive as a flood, and required an equally formidable barrier. They used stone and mortar to contain what they could not see but deeply feared, building not against the forces of nature, but against the forces of chaos itself. This sophisticated blend of belief and architecture reveals a culture that addressed both tangible and intangible threats with equal ingenuity. From a barrier that held back the unseen, we now travel to a dam that was designed to contain something terrifyingly real and lethally tangible. While the Maya built barriers against spirits, Roman engineers faced a far more earthly and practical threat: famine. Near the bustling outskirts of ancient Rome, the Portus Dam stood as a formidable structure along the Tiber River. For centuries, its classification seemed straightforward. Another example of Roman hydraulic genius meant to regulate the river's flow for the city's busy port. But this interpretation crumbled under modern archaeological scrutiny, revealing a secret hidden in plain sight for nearly 2,000 years. This was not merely a river dam, it was a masterpiece of urban planning and food security, one of the ancient world's largest and most secure granaries. Built during the reign of Emperor Trajan, the dam's true purpose was to hold grain, not water. Its thick, hollow walls were a complex network of storage compartments, each one carefully designed to preserve vast quantities of wheat, barley, and spelt that fed the empire's sprawling capital. The true genius of its design lay in a hidden ventilation system, a series of channels and shafts that created a constant, cool draft through the stored grain, preventing the rot and mold that could destroy the city's food supply. This was a dam against starvation, a physical barrier that secured the most vital resource for a population of over 1 million people. In an empire constantly threatened by political instability, its grain supply was its most powerful currency and its greatest vulnerability. The Portus Dam was a silent, stoic guardian of that stability, a monument to the Roman understanding that true power was not just held in legions or gold, but in the simple, sustaining weight of bread. It forces us to reconsider what we label as infrastructure, proving that the most mundane contents can be the most critical to a civilization's survival. And if a dam could be built to contain something as essential as food, what other fundamental human needs might these ancient walls have been designed to hold? The shifting sands of the Egyptian desert conceal a guardian of stone, the Abidos Dam. Unlike the fertile banks of the Nile, this arid landscape held no river to tame. This immense barrier served a far more profound purpose, acting as the eternal sentinel for a royal tomb complex. Built during the Old Kingdom, its sheer, imposing walls were a dual defense system, engineered to withstand two relentless forces, human greed and the desert itself. It was a permanent, unmovable answer to the constant threat of looters and the slow, suffocating encroachment of sand dunes that could erase a pharaoh's memory from the earth. Behind this formidable facade lay not just burial chambers, but a curated repository of an entire existence meant for the afterlife. The walls within were filled with everything a god-king would need for immortality: golden chariots, alabaster jars of perfumes, intricate jewelry, and sacred texts. But the most powerful deterrent was not physical, it was spiritual. Inscriptions carved deep into the stonework served as the final, terrifying layer of security. They promised divine retribution and a curse upon any soul foolish enough to violate this sacred space, a warning that one's lineage would be erased and their afterlife forfeit. This was not merely a dam containing artifacts, it was a structure designed to contain the very spiritual essence of the pharaoh, a permanent vessel for their journey to godhood. It stands as a monumental declaration that some things are too precious to be lost to time or theft, requiring an architecture of eternity to hold them safe. This drive to preserve a legacy through stone leads us to a barrier built for something even less tangible than a spirit, a force of pure, volatile energy. Persia's desert sun beat down upon another structure that defied its name, the Pasogadi Dam. Here, in the heart of Cyrus the Great's empire, engineers were not battling a river but a far more insidious enemy, the slow decay of knowledge. This dam was a fortress for information, its deep, dry, and remarkably cool subterranean chambers meticulously designed to preserve the most valuable asset of an ancient superpower, its administrative records. Within these stone vaults lay the intricate workings of governance, thousands of clay tablets and papyrus scrolls detailing everything from tax collection and legal decrees to agricultural yields and diplomatic correspondence. This was the empire's operational brain, a centralized database secured against the twin threats of fire and flood. The dam's massive walls provided a stable, temperature-controlled environment, a natural climate control system that prevented the precious papyrus from becoming brittle and the clay tablets from turning to mud. In an age without digital backups, this was how a civilization ensured its continuity, by literally carving its memory into the landscape. The message was clear: information was the true foundation of power, more enduring than any army and more vital than any treasure. It was a force so critical to maintaining order that it required an immense barrier of stone to protect it from being lost. This profound respect for preserving knowledge reveals a sophisticated understanding of legacy, but it also highlights a universal truth. For every force a society values, whether it is wealth, faith, or knowledge, there exists an equal and opposite force of chaos. And as we will see, some of the most ingenious dams were built not to preserve, but to protect against something actively destructive. Mount Vesuvius loomed not just as a mountain, but as a constant, silent threat to the towns at its feet. While most know the story of its catastrophic eruption, few are aware of the ingenious defensive structure built in its shadow, a dam designed for a river of air. Roman engineers constructed a massive earthen and stone barrier not to hold water, but to divert and contain the volcano's deadliest pre-eruption emissions, clouds of suffocating carbon dioxide and abrasive ash flows that would sweep down the slopes. This dam was an early warning system and a protective wall, built based on generations of observation. The Romans had learned that before the mountain exploded, it would often exhale these poisonous gases, which, being heavier than air, would flow like an invisible flood into low-lying areas, silently suffocating everything in their path. The dam was strategically placed to channel these deadly currents away from the most populated settlements, a desperate attempt to buy time and save lives. It was a monumental effort to combat an unstoppable force of nature with sheer human ingenuity. The discovery of this structure completely changes our understanding of Roman engineering, revealing a society that was not only building for glory and commerce, but also for pure survival against environmental threats. They recognized that some of the most dangerous floods are the ones you cannot even see. This pragmatic approach to containing a lethal natural force finds a dark parallel in a later era, where the threat was not volcanic gas, but a poisonous product of human industry. The Spartans understood that true military power lay not just in the strength of their warriors, but in the secrecy of their supplies. Along the Eurotas River, a formidable stone barrier was erected, its public purpose being the management of seasonal waters. But its true function was far more strategic, serving as a hidden arsenal for the city-state's entire military apparatus. Within its thick, hollow core and deep subterranean chambers, the dam concealed thousands of iron-tipped spears, bronze shields, and reinforced armor, all meticulously maintained and ready for deployment. This was not a simple storage shed. It was a carefully engineered vault designed to protect Sparta's most critical assets from corrosion, thieves, and perhaps most importantly, the prying eyes of rival city-states like Athens or Thebes. Its robust construction could withstand attempted sieges, and its location allowed for rapid, discreet distribution of equipment to troops without alerting enemies to the scale of their preparations or the imminence of an attack. This dam was a physical manifestation of the Spartan ethos, constant readiness, and the element of surprise. It contained the very instruments of conflict, transforming a structure typically associated with sustaining life into a guardian of a warrior society's relentless ambition. Where one culture built a dam to hoard weapons for war, another, high in the mountains, constructed a barrier for something believed to be far more sustaining to the human spirit. High in the Peruvian Andes, the concentric terraces of Moray curve into the earth like a stone amphitheater built for the gods. While it resembles an agricultural research station, which it partly was, its central dam structure reveals a far deeper purpose. This was not built to irrigate crops, but to contain the most valuable offerings of the Inca Empire, gifts intended to ensure those crops would grow. Within the dam's secure, sheltered chambers, priests would place exquisite gold figurines, finely woven textiles, and vessels of chicha beer, all carefully presented to appease Pachamama, the Earth Mother. The dam's brilliant terrace design was functional for more than just stacking. It created a sacred arena where the entire community could witness these crucial ceremonies. Each level represented a different layer of the Andean world, allowing rituals to be performed with precise symbolic meaning, connecting the people directly to the spiritual forces that governed their survival. The structure contained not water, but hope, faith, and the tangible expressions of a bargain with nature. It was a dam holding back the threat of famine by securing divine favor, a perfect fusion of practical need and profound belief. This demonstrates that the contents of these barriers could be as ethereal as a prayer, yet considered just as vital to a civilization's continuity. If a dam could be built to contain something as conceptual as spiritual goodwill, it stands to reason that another might be constructed for its absolute opposite, a physical substance so dangerously volatile that its very presence threatened entire cities. The Great Wall of rose from the Mesopotamian plains not as a barrier against water, but as a fortress for life itself. In one of humanity's first great cities, this immense structure served a purpose both profoundly simple and utterly vital. It was the world's largest livestock pen. Its thick, encircling walls were designed to corral and protect thousands of cattle, sheep, and goats from two relentless threats: the seasonal floods of the Euphrates River and the ever-present danger of raids from rival city-states. This was not a dam holding back a river, but a dam holding in the very foundation of Ur's economy and survival. Within its secure confines, the city's entire wealth in movable goods was protected, the animals that provided meat, milk, wool, and leather. The structure's design was a marvel of agrarian pragmatism, with internal channels to manage waste and provide fresh water, and massive gates that allowed for the controlled movement of herds. In an era before coined money, a city's herd was its living treasury, and the Dam was the vault. It represents a pivotal moment in engineering, where the concept of containment was adapted from managing natural resources to securing the building blocks of civilization. This practical application of a dam to safeguard life and sustain an economy stands in stark contrast to our next example, where the contents were not living and breathing, but crafted from light, sound, and pure human imagination. The Dionysus Dam in Athens presents a puzzle of pure artistry amidst these structures of raw power. This curved stone wall, nestled into the Acropolis slopes, was never meant to touch a drop of water. Its purpose was to capture something far more ephemeral and beautiful: sound itself. This was an acoustic dam, a brilliant piece of architectural engineering designed solely to contain and project the human voice for dramatic effect. The dam's specific, calculated curvature acted as a massive natural amplifier, catching the voices of actors performing in the adjacent theater of Dionysus and reflecting the sound waves clearly and powerfully up to the very highest tiers of seating. Every whisper of a tragic line, every chorus of a hymn, was held within its embrace and delivered with perfect clarity to an audience of thousands. This innovation reveals a culture that valued cultural experience as a vital resource, one worthy of the same sophisticated engineering typically reserved for aqueducts or fortifications. They understood that a performance could flood an audience with emotion, and they built a dam to channel that flood perfectly. This structure contained not water, but echoes and artistry, proving that the ancient world pursued beauty with the same intensity as security or survival. Where one civilization built to magnify the human spirit, another was forced to construct a barrier to contain its darkest and most lethal byproducts. The scorching Spanish sun baked the red earth around the Rio Tinto mining complex, where Roman engineers faced a problem of their own creation. The massive stone barrier they built here was not for irrigation or flood control. It was designed to contain a man-made river of poison. This dam held back the toxic runoff from extensive silver and lead ore processing, a lethal cocktail of heavy metals and acidic water that would have otherwise flowed unchecked into the region's vital water sources. The Romans understood the environmental and health consequences of their industry, recognizing that this byproduct was a destructive force requiring permanent containment. They constructed this barrier as a matter of public health to isolate the hazardous waste and protect the communities and agriculture downstream. It stands as a startlingly early example of environmental management, a conscious effort to mitigate industrial impact using the only large-scale tool they had, a wall of stone. This pragmatic solution reveals a layer of Roman society often overshadowed by their military conquests, a complex civilization that was already grappling with the polluting side effects of its own technological advancement. The legacy of the Rio Tinto Dam echoes in our modern containment strategies for industrial waste, proving that the challenge of holding back what we create is as ancient as industry itself. From a barrier that held literal toxic waste, we now journey to one that contains something far more symbolic, yet equally powerful in its ability to shape an empire. A river of gold and silk once flowed across the stone spine of the Tungabhadra Dam. In the heart of the Vijayanagara Empire, this structure's highest terraces were not channels for water, but a meticulously engineered stage for power. Its wide, elevated causeways were built for a single, spectacular purpose: to contain the grandeur of the royal procession. This was where the empire displayed its absolute authority, not through decrees but through breathtaking spectacle. Imagine the sight: the emperor and his court, adorned in impossibly fine silks and glittering jewels, mounted on elephants caparisoned in gold, moving in a slow, majestic parade along this elevated pathway. Below, the common citizens would gather, looking up at this living tapestry of wealth and divinity. The dam's design physically elevated the ruler above his people, a constant, stone-built reminder of the unbreachable social hierarchy. It contained the spectacle itself, channeling the empire's message of power and permanence directly into the eyes of every witness. This was infrastructure as political theater, a dam that held back not a liquid, but the very idea of descent through overwhelming displays of control and opulence. Where one civilization built to contain a visible display of power, another turned its attention to the heavens, constructing a barrier to harness the invisible patterns of the cosmos itself. Stone and shadow aligned with the stars above the Euphrates. In Babylon, a dam was built not just of earth and brick, but of mathematics and prophecy. This structure was a celestial observatory, its long, straight crest and precisely placed markers aligned with the movements of Venus and the constellation of Orion. For the Babylonian priests, this was how they contained the chaos of time itself. The dam's alignment allowed them to track planetary cycles with stunning accuracy, predicting the changing seasons, the optimal times for planting and harvest, and the precise dates for sacred rituals. It was a tool that transformed the vast, unknowable cosmos into a measurable, predictable system. They built a wall against uncertainty, using engineering to harness the heavens for both practical survival and spiritual order. The contents of this dam were not physical but temporal, holding the very schedule of an empire. This fusion of science and faith reveals a civilization that saw no divide between the concrete world and the celestial one. Where one culture built to contain the movements of the heavens, another turned its attention to the earth, constructing a barrier to hold a resource so fundamental it shaped daily life for every single person. The value of salt was weighed in gold across ancient empires, and in Sichuan, engineers built a dam to protect it. The Zigong Dam was a fortress for preservation, its massive, bone-dry chambers meticulously designed to contain and age vast quantities of white crystals. This was not about holding back a river, but about holding in a perfect environment. Moisture was the enemy of this precious mineral, causing it to clump and spoil, so the dam's thick, insulating stone walls created a naturally cool and arid vault. Inside, mountains of salt harvested from local brine wells were stacked and left to cure, their value increasing with time as they were prepared for trade along the burgeoning Silk Road. This structure was the economic heartbeat of the region, a physical bank that secured the commodity that preserved food, seasoned diets, and ultimately sustained populations through harsh winters. It transformed a simple mineral into a stable form of wealth, proving that the most practical contents could be the most powerful. This ingenious use of a dam for economic preservation finds a direct parallel in the next structure, where the contents were not for sustaining the body but for healing it. The dry heat of the Egyptian desert was not merely a challenge, it was a tool. near the ancient city of Thebes, a low, sprawling stone structure was built to master it. This was not a dam for the Nile's waters, but a dam against the Nile's humidity, a formidable barrier designed to protect the most potent medicines of the ancient world. Within its cool, dark, and perfectly arid chambers, priests and physicians stored vast quantities of dried herbs, precious seeds, and powdered roots. Each plant was a carefully harvested weapon against disease and injury, from willow bark for pain to honey-infused bandages for wounds. The slightest moisture in the air could ruin these delicate compounds, robbing them of their healing power and turning a life-saving remedy into a useless pile of dust. This structure was a sanctuary for wellness, a library of life where the contents were not scrolls, but the very ingredients of health itself. It reveals a society that viewed medicine with the same reverence as theology or statecraft, investing immense resources to safeguard its people's well-being. They understood that a kingdom's true strength was measured not only in its granaries but in its apothecaries, and they built a dam of stone to contain that vitality. This profound commitment to preserving life stands in beautiful contrast to a dam constructed for a very different kind of preservation, one that captured not health, but the human soul expressed through art. A brilliant splash of color defied the jungle's relentless green in Capon. Here, a low, sturdy barrier of stone was built with one purpose: to protect not people or goods but stories. This was a dam for art, a defensive wall constructed to shield the city's most intricate and vibrant murals from the destructive force of tropical downpours and soil erosion. The Mayor of Capon viewed these paintings as far more than mere decoration. They were sacred narratives, a visual library depicting the lives of gods, the history of kings, and the very creation of the world. To lose them to the elements was to lose a fundamental part of their identity and their connection to the past. The dam's clever design channeled rainwater away from the fragile plaster walls, while its presence stabilized the ground, preventing the slow, creeping landslides that could have buried these masterpieces forever. It was a permanent, physical commitment to preserving cultural memory, a declaration that a society's soul could be contained within its art, and that this soul was worth building a fortress to protect. This profound effort to save visual stories finds a fascinating parallel in a structure designed to contain a different kind of narrative, one told not with pigment, but with rhythm and breath. High above the sacred site of Delphi, a structure of stone was built not to block a river, but to channel a different kind of current entirely. This was the Delphi Dam, an acoustic resonance chamber meticulously engineered to amplify the music of rituals. Its walls were not solid barriers, but hollow, carefully shaped forms designed to trap and enhance the sound waves from flutes, lyres, and choral voices. During ceremonies to honor Apollo, the god of music, these sounds would not simply fade into the air. They were caught within the dam's embrace, their vibrations swelling and mingling to create a powerful, immersive atmosphere that could overwhelm the senses. The priests understood that this heightened auditory experience was a direct pathway to the divine, a way to elevate the human spirit and facilitate a deeper connection with the gods. The dam's contents were not water or grain, but pure vibration and sacred harmony. It stands as a testament to a belief that artistic expression was a tangible force, powerful enough to require architectural amplification and worthy of the same engineering genius as any aqueduct. This pursuit of order through artistic means finds a stark and practical counterpart in a later structure, one built not to contain beautiful sound, but to enforce the rigid letter of the law. The Capitoline Dam in Rome was a fortress for words, not water. Its thick, fireproof walls were built to contain the most powerful force in the empire, the law itself. This secure archive held thousands of stone and bronze tablets, each one meticulously inscribed with the decrees of the Senate, the edicts of emperors, and the foundational principles of Roman justice. These were not mere records, they were the operating system for a civilization, the immutable code that governed everything from property disputes to the rules of war. The dam's primary enemy was chaos, the kind that would inevitably follow if these sacred texts were lost to fire, theft, or the slow decay of time. Its existence guaranteed judicial continuity, ensuring that a verdict in a remote province would align with the law as it was written in the heart of the capital. This structure made the abstract concept of rule of law into a physical, permanent reality, a declaration that society itself could be contained and protected behind a barrier of stone. It proved that infrastructure was the silent partner of governance, the immovable foundation upon which all order was built. This drive to impose order through legal texts finds a sharp contrast in a structure built to contain a substance that was inherently chaotic, volatile, and essential for progress. A wall of stone in ancient Tyre held a fortune more vibrant than gold. This was the Phoenician Dam, a sprawling industrial complex where colossal vats were embedded directly into its structure, each one brimming with the most precious colors in the ancient world. The primary treasure was Tyrian purple, a dye extracted through an incredibly laborious process from the murex snail. A single drop was worth a fortune, and the dye itself became synonymous with royalty and immense wealth, as the color did not fade but grew brighter with weathering and sunlight. The dam's primary function was intensely practical, to prevent catastrophic spills of these astronomically expensive liquids. A single misplaced vat could mean financial ruin. But its purpose ran deeper than simple spill containment. The high walls and guarded access also served to protect the Phoenicians' greatest trade secret, the complex and foul-smelling extraction process that gave them a monopoly on this coveted color for centuries. This structure was a fortress of commerce, securing the very source of an empire's economic power. It proves that value could be measured in the intensity of a hue, and that something as seemingly abstract as a color could require a barrier of stone to contain its worth. From a dam that held a physical symbol of status, we now move to one designed to contain a spiritual force believed to offer protection to an entire civilization. A low, circular wall of stacked stone rises from the misty moors of Britain, its form more ritual than riverine. This is the Celtic Spirit Dam, a structure built not to hold back water, but to contain and concentrate protective magic. Within its sacred circle, generations of Druid priests carefully placed powerful ritual objects, intricately carved amulets of oak and stone, and shimmering talismans forged from enchanted metals. Each item was believed to be a vessel for spiritual energy, a focal point for warding off malevolent forces and ensuring the safety of the nearby village. The dam itself acted as a metaphysical barrier, its continuous, unbroken form symbolizing an impenetrable shield against chaos and misfortune. This was architecture as an act of collective faith, a physical declaration that the community's well-being was so vital it required a permanent stone guardian. The contents of this dam were not merely objects, they were the crystallized hopes and fears of an entire people, a tangible investment in spiritual security. It reveals a profound truth that to ancient cultures the most dangerous floods were not of water but of evil spirits, and the most precious resources were those that could secure divine protection. This drive to contain and manage spiritual power for the benefit of all finds a fascinating parallel in a final structure, one that shifted its focus from safeguarding the soul to nurturing the mind. A low, curved wall of pale limestone stood guard not over a river, but over the future of human thought. Along the periphery of the legendary Library of Alexandria, this unassuming structure was the Scriptorium Dam, a silent, stoic guardian of the ancient world's most precious commodity, knowledge. Its primary enemy was not flood or thief, but the insidious dampness rolling in from the Mediterranean Sea, a silent destroyer that could reduce priceless papyrus scrolls to crumbling, illegible pulp in a single season. The dam's brilliant design created a permanent microclimate of perfect aridity, its thick stone walls absorbing ambient moisture and its strategic placement blocking the sea's humid breezes. Within its sheltered confines, generations of scribes meticulously copied texts on philosophy, astronomy, and medicine, while scholars from across the known world came to study the preserved works. This was not a barrier against invasion, but against ignorance. It contained the very intellectual light of civilization, ensuring that the discoveries of one generation would not be lost to the decay that threatens all fragile things. The existence of such a structure reveals a profound societal value, an understanding that a culture's true endurance is measured not by the gold in its vaults, but by the ideas it preserves and passes forward. They built a dam to hold back the tide of forgetting, proving that knowledge was a force so vital it required a fortress of stone to keep it safe. If a civilization would construct such a barrier to protect its understanding of the world, it stands to reason another would build one to protect its ability to navigate it. The Persepolis Dam held neither water nor treasure, but something far more fleeting and powerful, light itself. This structure was a masterpiece of ancient communication, its towering platforms designed to contain and project signal fires visible for miles across the arid Persian plains. Each controlled blaze was a single word in a vast, silent language of flame and smoke, capable of relaying complex messages at speeds no horse or ship could ever match. A fire lit on one tower would be seen and repeated by the next, creating a cascading chain of light that could carry news of an invading army, the safe arrival of a trade caravan, or an imperial decree from the heart of the empire to its farthest reaches in a single night. This was a dam containing information, but of the most urgent and immediate kind, transforming a static barrier into a dynamic network. It highlights an ingenious shift in thinking, where the structure's purpose was not just to hold something in, but to actively send something out, facilitating the connectivity that held a vast empire together. This drive to connect and communicate reveals a society that valued speed and clarity, building monuments not just to power, but to conversation across vast distances. And if a dam could be built to contain something as urgent as a military signal, it stands to reason another culture might construct one for a purpose at the opposite end of the spectrum, pure leisure and recreation. The Olympia Dam presents a structure of pure, contained spectacle. Its long, low stone embankment was never meant to hold back a river. Instead, its flat, expansive crest and reinforced terraces were engineered for a far more dynamic purpose, to serve as the foundational stage for the original Olympic Games. This was a dam built to channel and contain the explosive energy of human competition. The massive structure created a perfectly level and stable arena from the uneven Greek landscape, a controlled environment where athletes could wrestle, sprint, and throw the javelin without the risk of a twisted ankle on unstable ground. But its function went beyond mere practicality. The towering sides of the dam also acted as natural grandstands, holding in the roar of thousands of spectators, their collective excitement and national pride echoing off the stone. This created a powerful, immersive atmosphere, a literal container of social energy where the chaotic fervor of the crowd was focused on the disciplined performances below. The dam did not just host the games, it amplified them, transforming individual contests into a unified civic and religious experience that strengthened the bonds of Hellenic culture. It proves that the most vital contents of these ancient structures were not always physical, but could be the shared moments of human achievement and celebration that defined a civilization. This final example of a dam built for pure spectacle and community brings us to our 24th and most mysterious barrier, a structure that seems to defy all previous logic in its contents and purpose. The final stone in our journey lies in a windswept valley of central Anatolia, a structure known as the Göbekli Barrage. Unlike any other, this dam's entire purpose was to fail, but on a schedule of its own choosing. It was not built to protect its contents from the present, but to preserve them for a future its builders would never see. This was a time capsule on a monumental scale, a deliberate and visionary act of communication across the millennia. Its architects, a sophisticated Neolithic culture predating even the great civilizations of Mesopotamia, filled its core not with treasure or weapons, but with a meticulous snapshot of their entire world. Sealed within its stone heart were carefully selected artifacts, seeds of every crop they cultivated, tools crafted from obsidian and bone, and clay tablets inscribed with symbols we are still struggling to decipher. Each item was a chosen word in a message to the unknown, a desperate and hopeful attempt to ensure they would not vanish without a trace. They built this dam to contain their very identity against the relentless erosion of time, creating a vault that could withstand earthquakes and climate shifts, patiently waiting for a future generation to break its seal. This final example transcends all others, revealing a universal human longing that connects the deepest past to our present moment. It is the desire to be remembered, to whisper into the void, "We were here." These 24 structures, from the gold vaults of China to this Neolithic library in stone, collectively teach us one profound lesson. The true measure of a civilization is not found in what it consumes, but in what it chooses to contain. What it deems so precious, so powerful, or so perilous that it must be encased in immovable rock and entrusted to the patience of the earth, they built not for themselves, but for the forever they would never witness. And in doing so, they left behind the most honest autobiography possible, written not on papyrus, but in the very shape of their fears, their faith, and their greatest hopes. A pattern emerges from these 24 silent stone sentinels, a hidden logic that connects the gold dam of China to the spirit dam of the Maya. It was never about the absence of water, but about the presence of something else that demanded an equal force of restraint. These civilizations were all answering the same fundamental question: what is the most powerful flood we face, and how do we build a wall against it? For some, that flood was human greed, rushing in to steal imperial treasure. For others, it was the slow creep of spiritual chaos or the sudden, invisible tide of poisonous gas. Their answers, though separated by continents and centuries, share a common brilliance. They recognize that the principle of the dam, the act of building an immovable barrier, was the most powerful tool they possessed to manage any overwhelming force, whether it flowed like a river or not. This redefines ancient engineering, moving it from a purely practical discipline to a deeply philosophical one. It was about creating order from chaos, stability from volatility, and permanence from the fleeting. A culture that built a dam for its laws, like the Romans, was making a statement that justice must be as solid and enduring as stone. A society that constructed one for its art, like at Capon, declared that its cultural soul was worth preserving against the erosion of time. These structures are a language, and their contents are the vocabulary telling us what each civilization feared to lose most. They challenge our modern, often narrow, definitions of infrastructure and progress. We see a granary and think only of food, but to the Romans, it was a weapon against famine and revolution. We see a ceremonial platform and think of ritual, but to the Vijayanagara, it was a tool for political control. Our ancestors were not primitive. They were profoundly sophisticated in their understanding that survival meant safeguarding both the body and the spirit. They engineered for the human condition in all its complexity, building walls to hold back everything from starvation to despair. This collective ingenuity leaves us with a humbling thought. If we were to build a dam for our own time, what would we choose to contain behind impenetrable stone for the benefit of a future we will never see? Would it be a seed vault to preserve biodiversity, a data archive to hold our digital memory, or something we have not yet even conceived? The legacy of these ancient dams is not just in their stone, but in the question they force us to ask ourselves about what we truly value and what walls we would build to prove it. The true genius of these structures lies in their refusal to be confined to a single purpose. They were never just dams, just granaries, or just fortresses. They were masterpieces of multifunctional design, where a single wall could simultaneously defend against floods, store grain, and project imperial power. Ancient engineers thought in layers, weaving together the practical needs of survival with the profound demands of the human spirit. This holistic approach to problem solving is a powerful lesson for our own era of specialized and sometimes short-sighted innovation. It challenges modern architects and archaeologists alike to look at the past not as a series of isolated artifacts, but as an interconnected web of human ingenuity. What other multifunctional marvels have we overlooked simply because we labeled them incorrectly from the start? These 24 dams urge us to cultivate a deeper curiosity, to question the obvious function of every ruin and relic we encounter. The next time you stand before an ancient wall, ask not just what it was built for, but what it was built against and what it was built to preserve. The stories etched in stone are waiting for those willing to listen. If this journey through hidden histories has sparked your imagination, we would love to hear which of these dams surprised you the most. Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to join us as we continue to explore the world's greatest mysteries. Remember, sometimes the most astonishing secrets are not hidden in deep tombs, but standing silently in plain sight, patiently waiting for us to finally understand their true purpose.